Hey guys, what's up? So in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about how and why I moved to Italy. So if you've seen other videos on my channel, then you know that I'm a bit of a language lover. I started learning Italian at the end of 2015, my senior year of high school, and it was all independent self-study because they didn't offer any Italian classes at my high school or really nearby or really anywhere. So Italian is spoken more or less in America, but not in my state. I live in the Midwest. So I didn't have a lot of opportunities to interact with other speakers, just to kind of get more or less the immersion experience or know how at the time to create an immersion experience for myself without, living in that country. Of course, it always was a dream of mine to go to Italy, one of the reasons why I started learning Italian, but I just didn't see how that was possible, or even being able to travel or live there at the time. I was a senior in high school, worked a janitor job, so that really wasn't in my budget, at the time. But I continued studying, working hard, and when I was 20, in 2018, I decided, after saving up for about a year, working like 60-hour weeks, I decided, hey, why not take a trip to Italy? Except something kind of changed that, and instead of taking a trip, I moved there. So an Italian friend of mine suggested that I should look into becoming an au pair. So what an au pair is kind of like a live-in nanny. However, you get paid kind of significantly less, basically. And what that means is that what's deducted out of your wages is what rent would be, basically, and like food bills, utility bills, I guess. Because the family, you're living with a family, so they're providing you with a room. They're supposed to provide you with a room. And they're supposed to, pay for every meal, provide you with 3 meals a day. Some families, if they're not like home for all 3 meals a day and you are, then they should provide you with like either the food there or give you money to make up for that. I guess each experience can be different depending on the family. That's the whole thing about being an au pair. But I had heard of what an au pair was like. I researched it a bit, and I knew a little bit about it before my friend had suggested that, and I was a little skeptical about it, kind of wasn't really leaning towards doing that, basically. But I started to reconsider some things. So it was kind of my dream, more or less, to have a job where I could use the languages that I spoke. And in order to improve my Italian, I felt like this would be a good push in the right direction, because I hadn't really been, immersed in the culture, in the language, just because I could only, at the time, I could practice speaking with myself, but more or less I was doing things to improve, listening, reading, writing, these kinds of things, not really anything to do with speaking. And I decided that since, I had worked for a long time, saved for a long time, that being an au pair in Italy would be a good choice, because I wanted to take my Italian to the next level, and I wanted to work towards my dream job. So in February of 2018, packed my bags, and I moved to Italy. So before that, I had found a family on a website. It was an au pair website. If you want to know the website, I can let you know. Just leave a comment, and I'll drop the link. So I found a family through a website. I had like a Skype interview beforehand. Everything seemed moderately okay for moving in with strangers, as okay as it can get. And so basically what I was doing, usually with being an au pair, it's like being a nanny or a babysitter in a way. So you're working with kids. But for me, and for some other countries, people just have au pairs to get their kids more introduced to English, to help them with that. So that was kind of what my purpose was in Italy. I was working in a family with teenagers, and I was teaching them English and Spanish. And so I felt like this was kind of like a nice break from the usual nanny work that I was doing at the time too. I was working with a lot of infants, which I loved, but sometimes, just need to step back every now and then. And I wanted to see how teaching would be, that sort of experience, in case it was like a future possibility for a career of mine. And so I decided to move there for 3 months because the visa process is a bit expensive, because being au pair isn't considered an actual job in Europe, or really most countries. And so you have to apply for a student visa, meaning if you want a student visa, you have to take a class, you have to, there's certain requirements you have to meet, and you have to pay for that all yourself. And this seemed super expensive, and not knowing how long I wanted to stay, because the longer I stay, the more I have to pay for the longer classes, and etc. So I decided to just, since it was my first time, go ahead and try it for 3 months. And I ended up in a city in Liguria. I love the city because it was really close to the sea, and I've never seen the sea before. So that was super awesome. So I was there for 3 months without a visa, which is something you can do in Europe. You can stay for 90 days or less. I had moved a lot of times before. I've moved 20 times. So moving wasn't something that is necessarily difficult for me. It can be sort of an annoying process sometimes. But this was my first move abroad. It was my first time abroad. So there were some things that were, I guess, maybe part of culture shock, I would say, things I wasn't expecting. But since you're staying, for a temporary amount of time, it's something that it's definitely doable and that you can plan ahead. I think being more immersed, because this was the first time I actually got to hear people speak Italian and interact with people, like, it did a lot of good for my learning experience. And I know one of the number one tips people say when you learn a language is to visit the country, and that's not always, like, because most of the time it's not a possibility or, something that's doable. But as an au pair, this makes it a little more doable. You are still getting paid. Since this was my first time in Europe, I was kind of excited to travel around a bit. So I did travel to some other countries, see Europe a bit, and I mean, like, it's all doable financial wise if traveling isn't something that you are as keen about as I am, per se, or if you're already, like, living in Europe and you just want to get immersed in another culture and a country. Plane tickets are a lot cheaper than flying from the US to Europe. So I say it's definitely doable financial wise, and it's a good option if you want to immerse yourself in another language, culture. Would I recommend being au pair in general? I think it depends on your level of experience working, maybe past work experience, and maybe if you've moved before. There's a lot of different factors. I would say if it's your first time and you're unsure about it, make sure you go for a short period of time, maybe like 1 to 3 months, like I did. That would be my number one tip. I definitely think this experience really helped me improve my Italian. Would I move to Italy again and be an au pair? Probably. It's Italy. I mean, come on. If you guys have any questions for me about being au pair, about moving abroad, or if you need tips really on any of that in general, just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help, happy to answer. And if you guys like learning languages, traveling, au pair things, be sure to check out my channel, subscribe if you want, and I will catch you all on the flip side. Ciao.